All right, so here we go, second part. All right, so again, kind of as a reminder, let me hide that. When you get into the midterm on Saturday, you'll go off, you'll start. Yes, obviously we'll put in a password for it. The first page is all those MCQs, exactly as what we just covered last time. We're not going to go through those again. All right, but of course, once you finally finish this, then what you do is you click on to the next page, and it will give you a reminder saying that, hey, once you have switched out of this page, you can't come back. And the reason for that is because on the next page there will be a link to the interpreter, and obviously it doesn't make any sense to give you these MCQs with an interpreter. Okay, I could give you MCQs with an interpreter, but you'll probably not enjoy the questions very much, because then I could start asking like more tricky questions, and I'll talk about that in the next page actually, about what to kind of expect. All right, when you switch over, you'll actually find that there are 3 pages. The very first page, there will be a link over here to the interpreter. Okay, I've already clicked on it, so I won't open that up again. I think everybody understands you can't open up 2 tabs anymore. Sorry, the reason for that restriction, by the way, is because obviously I think everybody likes having the backup, and the backup was supposed to retain even if you if Lockdown Browser completely crashes when you go back in, you still get your code back. And the only way I could successfully do that was basically to say, okay, we only have 1 tab, so I know exactly which thing should go where. A bit more thinking about it, I think I know how I could fix that, but hey, I guess if I ever have time to do it, it'll be done. Anyway, the first page will have a link to the interpreter, which I won't open right now because, as I say, it's open. There will also be a reference sheet. And what I do is I include a bunch of stuff about lists. Really, we don't absolutely need it because, you can always go to the interpreter and type help list, and you'll get all of the exact same thing. So it's not like I'm providing really anything that you don't have access to already, but because you can't open up multiple tabs, you might find it easier just to flip back to this one if you can't remember what function you need. Okay, so the functions are here, quick little description. Sometimes people don't like it because it doesn't say here's examples. No, you come up with your own examples. It's simply what does it do, and you're expected to know these things. It's really just to remind you, hey, if I'm doing, is it remove or is it delete? Okay, it's remove. That's about the usefulness to this. Now, in order to provide this, and I provide it on the final exam as well, but of course, I've got to provide things like wrong course here. I'm about to say lists and queues and stacks. So you know that you're going to have lists, you're going to have dictionaries, you're going to have tuples, you're going to have sets. So yeah, these things will all be here. In order to provide this, I need to provide 1 question, okay? And in this case, this happens to be the question. It's this one is not very difficult to deal with, although I will tell somebody I saw last year actually did a whole bunch of work, and they were literally tracing through this problem, but of course remember you have an interpreter, so you could just literally copy and paste this. Okay, so it's fine, but I will warn you, the questions that you get might not always be a copy and paste. Sometimes I will ask other questions, like for example, I think it was the final exam last year, the question that showed up here wasn't what's the output of this program, but it was, can you use a set as a key for a dictionary? Okay, so what do? Well, you try it. You make a dictionary and you try setting a key as a set. And then you try running it and it goes bleh, and then you realize that you can't do it. So in other words, it isn't just copying and paste, but you'd have to actually understand what all of those words mean. So it became a little bit more, almost like an extra MCQ. And really, I took a point from the MCQs for this one. If you're lucky, it's something you can copy and paste. If you're unlucky, it might take a little bit of stuff, but you should be able to actually create a little program to test it. So just to let you know. Actually, it turns out it's pretty simple because if you go through each of the letters, make this as a very simple exercise without copying and pasting it in. I'm going to go through each of the letters. So how many letters are there? No. Letters is right here. How many values are there? 6. Okay. I start with an empty, and I'm going through each one, and I'm building this up. So how many characters are going to be in result? There has to be 6 because it goes through 6 times. That has 4, that has 5, that has 6, and that has a lot more. There you go. I don't even need to run the program. It was actually pretty obvious. Yeah.
So in this question, I don't understand what is offset.
Oh, well, worst case is you could just take this entire thing and copy it and paste it into the interpreter.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, it was a placeholder because it's the only way I can put this little this extra piece of information here, like the list instructions. Okay, so there is kind of one, as I say, it's not entirely free all the time, but it's generally pretty easy. You do have an interpreter. Okay, off to the real question. All right, well, questions. Okay, so as promised, there are 2 questions. Okay, this is a style that we've been using. The first question, we try to make it somewhat straightforward, not trivial, by the way. No, it's not going to be add up all the values, find the minimum value, find the maximum value. Obviously, that's a single line thing. I can't give you 20 points on a 50-point test for a single line function. Okay, it doesn't make any sense. I know you want it, but I can't do it. Okay, I can't justify this. If somebody comes and reviews it, they'll say, what are you doing? You can't ask this. Okay, so it has to be something that's non-trivial. Okay, so sorry, it's not a trivial exercise. It has to be non-trivial. But the idea is that it's not like completely out of the blue and completely strange and different or incredibly complicated. That's the idea. It should be fairly straightforward because we want to know, does a student have the basic skills to be able to deal with, in this case, lists? Okay, and yeah, it's going to have something to do with lists. Those are the questions that we've got. Okay. However, when it comes down to grading for this one, there are 20 points, and here's the way how we break things up. Quite often we get the case where, all right, sometimes we get questions where the students just can't make it work. Now, what do I mean by can't make it work? You see, there's a couple of ways about not making things work. One is you can't get it to even run because you got syntax errors. Yeah, sorry, that's actually really, really bad. You are expected to be able to deal with syntax errors. I'm talking you misspelt the name of the function. Okay, no, these things you have to be able to do. If you misspell something, please do not expect to get, oh, it was almost there. No, you need to be able to do it. You've got an interpreter. It will tell you exactly where the problem is. All right, however, then we've got the other issues where it's sort of working, but not quite. The student had the right idea, but they messed up on an edge case. And what I mean by an edge case is they didn't think about it when the list was empty. They didn't work with it when there happened to be one extra value at the end. It didn't work in this particular weird little case. Those are edge cases. Not, well, I had a loop, so therefore I get 18 out of 20. No, we don't grade it this way. There are 2 things that we grade, and that is, 1, does it work correctly? Can it run? In all cases? Does it work in most cases? Does it work in some cases? Does it work in no case? Or does it not run at all? Those are the classifications. We classify it and there's a set of points. Every instructor follows the same rules. They're supposed to. All right, next thing up is, yes, there is some points in this question for logic. It's not a lot, it's like 8 points out of 20. And the instructor will review and say, okay, yes, you had the right idea. You knew that there was a loop, you knew that you were gonna have to be filtering things out, but maybe you completely messed things up. So yes, there are some points with this one. Okay, that's how the 20 points are broken. All right, so let's take a look and try to work through this one. I'll talk with the next question afterwards. All right, so it says, after offering a new coffee blend, a restaurant owner asks customers to complete a survey about the taste from 1 to 10. Okay, 1 being terrible, 10 being excellent. The data is saved into 2 lists. Why would somebody put it into 2 lists? Well, I don't know. Maybe because in this test I don't have dictionaries, because that's how I would store it. I would store the customer's name as one property and their rating as the other property if I had a dictionary. But we don't have dictionaries, we have 2 lists. Not a nested list, just 2 separate lists. One of the lists contains just the name of the customers and the other list contains just the ratings, but they are related to each other. The rating that Ali has provided is 7. Fatma has provided 2, very good. This number right here, 10, this was rated by who? Good, there you go. Now you understand the idea. Okay, that's how the 2 things are related. So, and there's an example right here, so you don't even have to try and work this through. Provide an example so we know what's going on. It says write a function named identify poor reviewers. Oh, we're not supposed to be doing that, right? When students provide surveys, we're not supposed to go and say, oh, it was that student, this student, and this student who did it. Okay, no. But coffee ratings, we don't care. Okay, so it's not really an anonymous survey, but okay, whatever. And what we want to do is we want to find out, write a function named identify poor reviewers that takes a list of customer names and a list of ratings and returns a list of reviewers who didn't like the taste. basically, who rated the test rated the taste less than 5. Okay, and of course, your solution must work with any lists that are supplied. Whoops. Okay, now, by all means, ask the instructor exactly what this ends up meaning. They won't say, don't ask them, what does this mean? But you can certainly ask about something like, what happens if we start sticking in strings inside ratings? Okay, normally I try to include things saying, don't worry, we'll make sure that it's only ratings in there. Okay, but what I'm talking about when it says it could be any list is, well, what happens if I've got 5 customers, but I've only got 3 ratings? What do we do in this case? What do we do if we have 18 ratings and only 2 customer names? Okay, these are sort of some odd cases, and hopefully it's describing in here, which I think that it does. Oh, and of course, the solution must work for any lists that are supplied. Okay, in other words, you can't hard code it so that the function returns, let's see, Fatma, Omar. Okay, yeah, you're not getting your marks for that just because it worked. Okay, yeah, it has to work for any type of data that comes in, not just the particular case. Because sometimes I see students will hard code the results thinking that they're going to get away with something. Yeah, you're not. Okay, you're not, and you're probably not going to get many marks for anything in that case. Logic, no. Well, what about a doc string? No, not putting a doc string is a penalty, but you don't get marks for it. So don't say, yeah, you put it. No, you actually have to make things work. Okay, next up, it says include an appropriate doc string. You are required to put one even if the question doesn't say, because it is a coding guideline. So please just put it. I had students in my lab section yesterday asking, hey, do we have to put a doc string? And I said, okay, think about it this way. What's the cost of putting it in? It's going to take you how much time? Okay, it may be more than a second. It's gonna take you a minute, maybe 2, because chances are you can probably just copy and paste it. All right, so worst case, it's gonna cost you 2 minutes and you don't get any marks for doing it. What's the worst case? What's in the other extreme? You don't put it in I'm looking for it and I take away marks. If you put it in I'm not looking for it, then you've wasted a minute, and if you don't put it in I'm looking for it, you wasted a point. So what's the safer option? Put it in. Okay, put it in, there's no question. All right, so make sure to include. So even if I don't say, please put it. Okay, if there are, here we go. If there are less customers in rating, the function returns an empty list. Sorry, not an empty list, but an empty list. Okay, problem with autocorrect, right? If there are less customers than ratings, the extra ratings will be ignored. Okay, so there's some weird cases, like we have too many ratings, too many customers. You know what? Deal with that at the end. You've seen me solve enough problems these days that I start off by dealing with kind of the general case, and I start to worry about like these odd cases afterwards. Don't get yourself caught up on odd cases right at the beginning, because if you worry about the odd cases at the beginning and don't get to actually write any of the general code, your score ends up not being that great. All right, so here we go. We will grab just this one right here. Okay, one test case. Yeah, I know we've got a bunch of test cases. Check them later. Honestly, start with one, because if you have problems on the first one, there's no reason to try the second ones. Yeah.
The full marks, it means the code has to work for all of the different cases or just the main case?
It has to work for all cases.
Okay.
Sometimes there are cases that we don't put in here. Watch out. Okay. Sometimes I get students back saying, no, it's not fair, you didn't say. Well, I said it should work for all things. Yeah. Okay. I can't put all of the possible test cases here because, well, I've got a finite amount of space. I do try to put them, but sometimes students will write code that will pass the cases here, but when you look at it, you go, no, it's going to fail in this case because it wasn't quite general enough. So just keep that in mind. It has to work for everything. That's for full marks. I usually, as I say, I try to make sure the examples are here, but sometimes I miss something. And sometimes students just do really unusual and unexpected things. I'm not saying that is wrong, but sometimes if you do something that's really unusual, it's like, well, no, it's not going to work if you did this. Okay, so just bear in mind, if we notice that, then it might be, well, it fails in this case, even though it wasn't listed. Standard case. Standard case is a good place to start. Okay, so here we go. We'll paste it over here, bang, and I can make that just a touch bigger. Okay, that's big enough. All right, and, well, let's go off and start writing this. All right, if I try running the program right now, which of course is always my first attempt, well, oh, identify poor reviewers is not defined. Yeah, it's a function. Okay, identify poor reviewers. Okay. Oh, identify poor reviewers takes 0 positional arguments by passed in 2. Remember, there are 2 parameters that needs to go in here. The 2 parameters are a list of customer names and the second one being ratings. So let's call it customers and ratings. There we go. Hey, got the program to work. Okay, you're not going to get many marks for this, but at least we got the program to work. All right. You've seen me do this before. One of the things that I do when I have a lot of lists and so on, sometimes I just print things to see what I've got. But now let's take a look at this. Do we have the information? Okay, well, just as a very quick trick. Okay, customers and print ratings. Okay, all right, that's fine. That's fine. We've got all this type of stuff. But now what are we going to do with it? Well, here's the trick with this one is I need to go through, I need to iterate both arrays because when the index is equal to 0, the name is going to be Ali, and of course index 0 is also going to be Ali's score, which is 7. I need to have the positions of these things. A lot of students would go at this question and they'd say, okay, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to say for R in ratings, print R. Okay, there's all the ratings. Okay. And obviously if I do this with customers, I'm going to see the customers, but the problem is how do I link these together? That's the issue. All right, so quite often what I will end up seeing is I might see somebody do something like this for R and C in common and customers and ratings and customers. Okay, here we go, and customers, and you try to run it. Okay, customers. Okay, customers. There we go. Too many variables to unpack. Yeah. What does that mean? All right, what does the word unpack mean? It's not part of the test, by the way, but we've seen the word. Where is unpacking used? No, not lists. Not dictionaries. They're tuples. Okay, remember when you get back a tuple, you can always provide a tuple and say, please assign 2 things to this tuple. That's what the word unpack means. All right, and of course, this is what I'm trying to do right here. This is a tuple. That is a tuple. Unfortunately, ratings comma customers is not something that you can iterate either. Okay, so no, unfortunately, you can't iterate through 2 lists like this. You can iterate one, then you can iterate the next. But the problem is it doesn't tie things together. The only thing you can do to tie things together is to have the index locations. This is one of these situations where you have no choice but to set up an index. Now, the good news is, how many customers do I have in my list? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many ratings do I have? 5. Oh, okay. Yeah, we have cases where things are not going to work, but we've got conditions to deal with this. Let's see what we're supposed to do here. All right, and we'll come up with some techniques for how we could solve the problem. There's actually a lot of little problems in here. All right, yeah, I'm going to go through because I'm basically trying to do parallel iteration through 2 lists. It would work if you had 5 lists. If you want to do the same thing, you'd also do this. Yeah, you use indexes. Okay, so here we go, index in. Now, remember with an index, if you're dealing with this, we're almost always talking about ranges. Okay, let me just put the number 10 here to hard code it. And I'm going to print index. Okay, there you go, 0, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, this is going too far. I should only go 5. Okay, because there's only 5 things. Okay, we'll wait for you to finish. Yeah, sorry, it's disturbing everybody. Okay. Oh, it is no problem. I was going to say if it's a scam, it would be great. You could have put it on speaker and we could have all like joined in. And that would have been really confusing when they say, could you please give us your QR code number? We could all talk at the same time. It would have been cool. But anyway, it's fine. All right, so here we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from 0 up to 4 because, well, that's how many elements I have. Oh, but what if there's more? One piece at a time. Okay, what do you think I should do instead of putting the value 5? Yeah, the length of, that would be much, much better. Let's fix that afterwards. Okay, we'll fix that afterwards. We'll come back to it. But right now I have 5 of each, so this is going to be really good. So here's what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to print the customers at position index, and I'm going to print the ratings at index. And take a look what I get. I get exactly the names of the customers along with their particular rating. Oh, okay, good. So now I know that Ali is 7, Fatima is 2, Omar is 1, Layla is 8, and Yusuf is 10. Perfect, that's exactly what I need. Because now I can start to make decisions on things. Okay, I wouldn't need to do this, but I would really like to do it. I would like to have a customer name. It's just to make the question a little bit easier to read later. I don't need it, because obviously I could just print customer's index, but I'd rather print cust name because it's going to make the if statements a little bit easier in a few seconds. So just to show you cust name. It doesn't change the program, still the same output. The same thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have something called the cust rate, for the customer rating, and it's going to be the ratings at the index. All right, so here we go, is cust rate. Okay, and again, just to show you, yep, no difference. But this way, if I have variables like cust name, cust rate, it might be easier to write some code. Okay, for example, I'm not interested in printing all of everything. I'm only interested in people who gave low scores. Okay, so now we can put in an if statement. That's how you decide which things are low or whatever. If the cust rate is, yeah, 5. Oh, is it less than or equal to? Okay, we can go back and take a look. It says rated less than. Okay, it says strictly less than. Look, to be honest, that's not going to be the end of you if you mess this one up and you put a less than or equal to instead of a less than. Yeah, I have to take a mark off, but you're not going to get a 0. You're not going to fail the course. Okay, so don't freak out by these types of things. All right, but go back and take a look. Don't ask the instructor. They'll probably say, I can't answer, it's a test. It's pretty clear. And it does say it's pretty clear. It says less than. All right, so if it's less than this, well, you know what? I'm not going to try to do anything else. I'm just going to print it. Again, you've seen me do this before. If you're trying to collect some data, well, let's just reduce it to things that we're interested in. And there we go. Now we can see the 2 people and their scores. Well, I don't care what they scored. I just want the people. Okay, so in other words, we're talking about not printing the customer rate, but just printing the names. And notice line number 5 and 6 is very easy to read. If the customer's rating is less than 5, print their name. Okay, we could do it without the variables. We could have said if customers at index is less than 5, print if ratings at index is less than 5, print customers at index. But I think this is easier to read. Okay, I just really think it is. All right, we're not interested in printing things. If we go back and take a look at the original question, it says it's supposed to take a list of names, blah, 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 and returns a list of reviewers. Okay, the reviewers' names, of course. Yeah. If you'd ask that question, the instructor would say, yes, the names. The examples down here kind of give it away, but just in case, by all means, feel free to clarify that. All right, how do you return a list of a whole bunch of things? Standard programming practice. You've seen me do it a whole pile of times. You have some kind of an empty list at the beginning of the function. You go through, and every time that you find something you're interested in, what do you do with it? You add it. Not add. What's the other word? Append, okay. And then at the very end, you return it. Okay, yeah, and that's, as I said, it's such a common programming pattern. Same thing. Does it have to be called result? No, if you want, you could call it low customers or something. Here we go. So we'll call it, oh, no. Here we go. Bad customers, right? Students who rate the course lower, but no, Okay, whatever you want to call it, I don't really care. If you want to call it result, that's perfectly fine. It's not really bad customers. They're just customers who didn't like the product. All right, so I'll leave it, but I'm not really considering bad customers. We don't want to print it, but instead we want to go to the bad customers, and you want to append it. Okay, and at the very end, return the bad customers. Ooh, those are back customers. Yeah, you won't find them in there. All right, bad customers if you spell it correctly. Hey, all right. Good. General case. All right, that's probably going to get you about, I'm going to say, probably 70% of the way there. Okay? There's a couple of things I don't like. For example, if I go and I add one extra person, I'll add myself, who also doesn't like it, so don't worry, I'm also considered a bad customer. If I run this, my name doesn't show up. Okay, the reason why it doesn't show up is because, yeah, because we're only going to this range right here. All right, we need a length. Length of C, not length of C. Okay, customers. Okay, we can talk about that in a few seconds because it should also work if you put R, right? Okay, we're going to remember that because that's going to become really, really important. Just let me put it down here. Change customers to ratings on line 3. Okay, we'll do that afterwards, but I'm going to go with this because that's exactly what you said. Good, now I'm there. Okay, excellent. That's a little bit better. All right, we probably still have some more problems, however, okay? Because what happens is if I put another name there, but I forgot to put a rating in the second list. If I try this right now, what do you think happens? Yeah, okay, error, that's always a good, safe answer, right? The other safe one is it doesn't work. Okay, but don't worry, I never asked that question, does it work or not? Yeah, if we go ahead and try to run this, yeah, it blows up with an index out of range. All right, first of all, what does index out of range mean?
It's out of range.
Yeah, it's out of range. The index is out of range. Okay, what this means is that you have a list, and inside the square bracket, you asked for a number that was just too big compared to everything else. All right, now, if you say, whoa, I have no idea what's going on, the one place that it shows up right here. Okay, it does show up right here. It says line number 12, or sorry, it says line number 12 and it says line number 5. What this means is on line number 12, the function was called and then I crashed on line number 5. That's the way how you read these things. It's called a call stack. Okay, we're usually interested in the last one. So it says there's an index out of range. Now the good news is there's only one index on this line, so it's easier to track down. If you have a couple of indexes, it can be really tricky. Now, the way how to work this out, print index and print the length of ratings. This is debugging, okay? Yeah, I don't know what's gone wrong. Yeah, just put it in. You see, the very last time, just before it crashed, the index was 5 and the length was 5. Oh, guess what? If you have a list with 5 elements, what's the biggest number you can have? 4. Right? I've gone one too many. All right, and that makes a lot of sense because, well, what I've got here is my customers has six people, and the ratings only has 5. Okay, that's the reason why we've got this problem. Okay, how do we deal with this? I think it was one of those if statements over here. Let's see what we're supposed to do. It says if there are less ratings than customers, excellent, the function will return an empty list. Okay, so in other words, just, yeah, you're done. Before you do anything, check it. Special cases can often be handled at the beginning of the function. Okay, just a simple if statement at the very beginning of the function before we do anything else. I mean, I guess you could put it right here if you want, but generally what I would do is I would just ask this question right up front. If the length of the customers is bigger than the length of the ratings, that's what it means, or feel free to write it the other way. What do we return? An empty list. That's how we're going to deal with it. That's what the question says. All right, so there we go. Now it's solved. Okay, excellent. All right. Let's put this back. Let's put in a rating, 50. Oh, okay, 2. And let's get rid of this one. Okay. All right. So, come on over here. Let's clear the output and we'll run it. All right. Ignore the print statements in the middle. I forgot to clean out this this print statement for my debugging. We solved the problem. Okay. Let's run it again. Okay. Fatma and Omar. Well, I mean, I guess it's kind of consistent, but what are we supposed to do in this case? We have too many ratings. Again, we go back to the documentation and we check, did they put something in here? And it says if there are less customers than ratings, the extra ratings will be ignored. Oh, okay, that's pretty straightforward then. So in other words, we just solved it exactly right. Okay, so we've actually already solved the problem. All right, so at this point here, what you could do is you could go and you could copy all of these to make sure that they work as expected. I think they're probably going to be all right. Okay, no, I don't even want to bother because I'm pretty sure everything is going to be fine. Oh, we're not quite finished. Remember, some kind of a doc string. Okay, yeah, just toss in almost, okay. Eventually, I'll be able to type correctly. Okay, remember, doc strings go right here. Okay, they are the first string. Okay, so describe what the function does. Sorry, you don't get to type that. I get to type it. Okay, you can probably copy and paste some kind of a description. I prefer the doc strings that people write themselves, by the way. I mean, I won't take marks off, but I do prefer doc strings that people write themselves, yeah. Are there extra conditions? Really? Okay. What conditions are we talking about?
If the rating was more than the customers, they will ignore the extra rating.
Yeah, didn't we do? Oh, sorry, I forgot to put an extra one. You know, let's see, 1, 2, 3. Oh, sorry, I thought I had an extra one in here at the end. Yeah, sorry about that. I think I removed something and I removed something else by mistake. Yeah, this is still okay. It still is being ignored. Okay, sorry, I remove that at the end. And the reason why this ends up being ignored is because we went through all the customers. If we had decided to go through the ratings instead, this would have been a slightly trickier problem, but I don't mind changing that in a second to see what we could have done. Okay, all right, do we have any other conditions I missed? Okay, and sorry about that, I think it changed one, yeah.
So when writing the doc string, should we describe every individual line, like line 5 does blah,
No.
blah, blah?
No. Okay, here's the deal with functions. When you write a function in an industry setting, the reason why you're writing a function is because somebody else is probably going to use your function, okay, or you're using it for some other purpose. Okay, people don't just make up functions just sort of for the fun of it. Nobody's sitting around saying, make a function for this, make a function for this. It's the programmer who's making these decisions. And what you're interested in isn't how does the problem get solved, but you're interested, what does the function do? So you would never go through and say, on this line it does this. You have access to the code, you can see it. But from the person who's using it, we want to know, what did the parameters do? What does the function return? Okay, so tell me what the function does, tell me what the parameters are, tell me what it sends back. Okay, and it can be freeform. And as I say, I actually prefer students who give it a shot and type some stuff. Even if it's not that great, I prefer that over copying and pasting what I've written. Because at that point, maybe you haven't quite internalized what the function is doing. I don't take marks off if you copy and paste. It's just my recommendation, try it. Okay, I won't, if you try it and you give a really bad description, I'll make a comment on it, but I won't take marks off for it. Okay, as long as it is kind of an attempt at it. So don't just copy and paste like blah. Okay, yeah.
Can you try the last case?
Try the last case. Sure. Which last case? Do you mean from the exercise down here? Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fair. I don't mind this. No bad ratings, empty list. Ooh, okay. Do you know something that we don't or we haven't bumped into? No, it's an empty list. Yeah, I think it's okay. All right, and as I said, if you were to make a mistake and say, hey, let's go through the ratings. Okay, in order for me to do this, let me put it back to a working case. Identify poor reviewers. How many have I got in here? Now I've got too many. Okay, happy case. Everything matched. But now you'll notice that whatever I did when I stuck in an extra 1, now I've got a problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, there's a few different ways how I could solve this. The issue is that I'm going through the ratings and I have too many ratings compared to the number of customers. All right, a couple of things that I could do. You could get rid of the bad ratings, like the extra ratings. Just to give you an idea, and by the way, this is not going to be a solution. I will leave this for you. I'm just going to hard code something in here just so that you have an idea. What if I said rating.pop? Yeah, it's going to get rid of the last one, and suddenly it works. Oh, but what if somebody passes in something with 3 extra ratings? We'd have to repeat that to get rid of all the extra items. That's one solution. I don't like it because I'm modifying ratings. I'm modifying ratings. It means that I'm modifying R because it's an alias. Please remember that. Sometimes these functions say make sure not to modify the parameter. So therefore, yeah, you shouldn't do this. Another possibility is you could do something like this. You could say, okay, my own local rating, so I'll just call it rates, and I'm going to go to ratings, and I'm going to say from 0 until the length of the customers. I'll just print rates so we can see what we've got. All right, so you see what I've ended up doing is I managed to get rid of some stuff. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hey, not bad. I haven't used it yet, that's the problem. But you see what I did? I got rid of the extra items and a local variable. So instead of going through this, I could go through rates. Bang. Ooh, index out of range. Okay, well, we might have a little bit more work to go through. Oh, sorry, I know what I did. I changed the wrong thing. Okay, ratings, rates. That's the one I was looking for. There you go. So now the problem's back. That I would take, but I think I prefer the first one because it was easier to stop. Since we're here, let's do another possibility. Okay, here's another one. Oh, well, the best possibility is just go through customers because that was the minimum case. Okay, because that one will always end up working. So sorry, I wouldn't even say there's a better one. All right, and of course, we'll check everything just in case I've messed something up. Try your best at writing a doc string. Again, just describe what it does, describe what the parameters are, and describe what it returns. Does it need to list all of those things? An official doc string, yes, it would have to list all the conditions about how it works. Okay, for this one, it's not so critical, but point, again, the instructor will probably say, yeah, I'm not answering that question, but really it should be all right. So if you take a really good attempt at it and the instructor gives you a low grade, come see me. Okay, I'll fix it. Because I think, as I say, I would rather a student actually try and attempt at writing a doc string rather than copy and pasting something, but copy and paste works perfectly fine. Okay, no points lost for that. All right, and of course, when you're finished, yeah, you guys have been through all of this stuff before. You know to copy and paste this back. I'm going to tell you what ends up happening. Okay, this one right here, the instructor won't take off any marks for this, but they will get a little bit angry. Here's the deal. In any of these tests, don't include the main program. Okay, just delete it. Just copy and paste the function itself. Nothing else. Because here's what's going to happen. The instructor's going to take your code, they're going to paste it into another program that runs a whole bunch of test cases, some of your test cases, maybe some extra ones, and basically they're going to hit run and they're going to find out how many test cases passed and which ones failed, and they're supposed to copy the output and paste it back in as feedback so that you can see which test cases passed and failed. Then they've got, and what if it doesn't work? Okay, well what they will do is they will look, and if somebody accidentally mistype something, the instructor will fix it for you at a small penalty. Okay, so they will fix it and then we'll run it. It'll cost you like 2 marks or something. And if everything else is fine, it's good. Okay, if you got to change some other things because maybe the student has done this, that's not going to work. It'll work in your case, but it won't work over here because you have no idea what my global variables are called. In other words, you haven't used the parameters correctly. So just watch out for that. You have access to customers and ratings. Oh, and by the way, if you want to change these variables, I don't care what you call them, but don't use the global ones. Okay, that's my warning about this one. Okay, just copy and paste it. So there's a bunch of rules in here about what the instructors will do and what they won't do. Like, for example, here's a popular one. The very last thing, just before a student submits, you know what they do? Docstring. Okay, so they very quickly write a docstring, they put it right here. Does it work? And the answer is no. It doesn't work because that's not where a docstring works. A docstring has to be the first string inside the function, which means it has to be indented. Okay? All right, so the instructor will fix this for you, but now you don't have a docstring. Okay, next one up. This is one that some students did a few semesters ago, and then I will tell you the feedback. Okay, they wrote this. That's also not a docstring. That's a comment, but it's not a docstring. Okay, so as a result, yeah, we ended up having to take like a mark off for it. The student got mad at me and said, well, how am I supposed to know that? Well, we do this in class. In fact, well, I never knew that. And I said, yeah, open up lab number 3 and take a look at the feedback that I wrote. Because they did that in one of the labs, and I said, hey, this is not a docstring. Okay, put it inside. Well, the good news is the student learned, but for the final exam, they did it right. Okay, and I guess that's ultimately what we're trying to do. All right, so let's see, those are the types of problems that I bump into. Okay. Oh, yes. Get rid of it when you submit it. Don't submit it. Okay, just a function. Okay, that's going to be true for the midterm. Yeah, just whatever it is that you wrote right there. Okay, so no main program. Okay, I'm trying to remember if I said take a penalty. I don't believe that you take a penalty. I believe that they will erase it. Okay, without cost. Yeah.
If a student writes a nice comment for the instructor, does it change anything?
It might give the instructor a boost and something, but it's not supposed to change anything. If you write a bad comment about the instructor, it might change. I don't recommend that. Okay, but no, you're not supposed to be influenced by it. Although I don't know, strange things do happen. So it shouldn't. Please, if you bribe the instructor and the instructor gives you a higher mark, please let me know so I can lower your grade and deal with the instructor. Okay, and by the way, I'm not the one who grades your assessments. It is your lab instructor who grades them. Although sometimes I go in and help out. All right, let's do the second one. Okay, question number 5, or sorry, the very last question. This is the more tricky one. All right, and it's not meant to be impossible. It's just meant to be a little less obvious. It's usually only worth a small number of points, so 5 points. It's still going to be the same number, and basically comes down to this. If the student doesn't get it the work, they're supposed to get 0. Okay, this is an all or nothing. The reason why it's here is because a few semesters ago, so I was looking at this, I said, okay, it's great. I mean, the students are doing fine, but I can't differentiate between a really, really excellent student and one who is good. So that's why this is here. It's to help separate it. It's not, if you can't do this, it's not going to make a difference between you passing and failing, because it is only 5 marks, but it will help differentiate the really good from the good students, and I do need to try and do this. So it's not impossible, it's just a little bit more interesting, and as I say, no kind of like, oh yeah, well I kind of had a loop and I had an if statement. No, you have to make it work. Pretty much in all cases. There's like one little thing is if you miss kind of like an edge case, we usually take a mark off but let it go. But generally it isn't like, yeah, they had a loop, they had an if, they had a function, they had a docstring, so I'll give them 3 out of 5. No, it's not like that. If it works, you're going to get either 4 or 5, and if it doesn't work, you're not going to see anything from it. Okay, and as I say, most of the marks come from the previous. All right, so let's read through the problem. It says that a company's earnings per share, in case the FinTech students say that, hey, we never have anything for us, it's always signed stuff. No, I try to toss stuff in occasionally. All right, so hopefully there you've had a chance to learn about some financial stuff. Earnings per share is basically a measure of how healthy a particular company is, and often when people want to invest and buy shares in the company, they're looking for companies whose earnings per share are constantly going up and up and up and up each year. Because if you're thinking like, hey, I want to buy some stocks in Apple, and you see that one year they make $1 billion, and the next year they lose 15 billion, and the next year they make 10 billion, then the next year they make 14 billion, and then they lose 18 billion, maybe that's one company you want to kind of stay away from. Okay, as a long-term investor. All right, so we're just looking for a trend. Okay, and I could have done this outside of the context of earnings per share. It's really just numbers. Are those numbers increasing? Okay, well, let's take a look at it. 205, 215, 230, 250, 275. Are they increasing? Yeah, they're increasing. Okay, if I show you something down here, 205, 230, 225, 250, are those increasing? And the answer is no. It went up a little bit, but then it fell down, then it went back up again.
Yeah.
I want to be able to detect those types of things. Okay, so the whole thing comes down to basically returns true or false. Yeah, I really hate those because students can sometimes write a lot of really unpleasant code that particularly hits specific cases where it kind of looks like it's right, but as soon as you start to dig into it, you realize that this doesn't work at all in the general case. Because I had students saying, well, if the first is bigger than the second, or sorry, the second is bigger than the first and the fourth is bigger than the third, but it wasn't really general enough.
Yeah.
All right, so in any case, write a function called EPS increasing. You pass in the values that sets an array and returns either true or false. True if everything is good, false if at some point it goes down. That's the important thing. If at some point it goes down, that means that it's false. Otherwise, if you make it all the way through, or stays the same. Hopefully I've got one of those examples in here. Yeah, this one right here, I included one at the last second. If it stays the same, it's also considered false. All right, well, let's start with this one right here. Suppose the output true, and then we can just mess with things. All right, so the function def EPS increasing. Okay, bunch of data. Okay, fine. Return, okay, again, just my placeholder is just to make sure I've got the name of the function correctly spelled and I'm passing the values in. Yes?
Don't you think it's a little bit misleading? Go to the other tab.
Okay.
Next to false, it says diff in the third value.
Yeah, because it's explaining what's going on. It actually says in the third value right here, the price went down.
Well, maybe students tend to think that, maybe I have to print diff in the third value.
No, the output is false. The function returns true or false. This is an explanation. If you don't, I can remove the explanations, and then people might say, why is this happening? Okay, the comment was there just to say, this is why. Okay, yeah, and that could be a clarification. Okay, if the function actually does say, write a function that returns true or false. Okay, there's no print anywhere, it's just return true or false. So you could clarify that during the test. If you're not sure, say, shall we print this? The instructor should then say no, and they will probably highlight and say, look, the function returns true or false. Okay. Okay, so right now it doesn't return anything, it just prints or just returns blah while I work things out. All right, I suppose the first thing we could do is we could try printing something. So, for x in data, print. We'll just talk about what we've got. Okay, fine, that's all the values, that is increasing. But the problem about finding out whether or not something is increasing is you need to actually look at two things. Well, many things. But what you need to do, you see, you need to compare this to make sure it's less than everything else.
Yeah.
And it isn't just a matter of calling min. Okay, you'll get the min. Now, I suppose somebody could come up with a solution and say, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for the min, and then I'm going to see where it is. The minimum should be at the first position. And then I'm going to get rid of the min, and I'm going to repeat the thing over and over again. That's one way. That would work. It'd be very clever. Kind of slow, but I wouldn't take marks off for it. I'd say, well, that's kind of bizarre. Slow, but I'd give the marks for it. I wouldn't be happy giving the marks, but I would give it. But the issue is that we don't want to just look at one of these values independently of all the others.
Yeah.
We need to look at pairs of values. And that's where, unfortunately, to look at pairs of values, you need an index. Because given an index, you can always look at a current position and you can look one step forward.
Yeah.
And do a comparison. So unfortunately, it's not one of these, but it's once again one of these index. So for index in
Position.
range, length, data, exactly the same as before. And I'm just going to print index. Okay, there we go. So there's the individual values. Okay, that's fine. I got a bunch of modifications. Since we're here, we could also print data at index. That would give me the actual values. Okay, so these are the values. But the real question I want to ask is, Well, take a look at this. You see, I can just look at two pairs, or sorry, a pair, not two pairs. I can always look at a pair of numbers. Okay, let's go over here and take a look at some of the examples. Okay, any problem there? No, because the first one is smaller than the second one. Any problem here with that pair? No. Any problem with this pair? Oh, and the other one as well? No issues.
No.
You see, if I instead take the second one and I highlight this one and this one, is there a problem with it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. What's the problem? Well, the second one is less than the first one. Okay, and this one right here, this is also a problem because the second one is the same as the first one. Okay, so if I can break this up into pairs, then what I could do is I could iterate through looking for these things. All right, so really what I want to do is I want to compare two things. You see, I want to compare data at index as well as data at index plus 1. Now notice where I put the plus 1. I put the plus 1 inside the subscript operator. So take a look at this. And by the way, this is going to be very unpleasant. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay, but just take a look at the first line. You see, when the index was equal to 0, I'm comparing 2.05 and 2.15.
Yes.
Well, that's the first pair. The second one, when it was equal to 1, I'm comparing 2.15 and 2.3.
Yes.
That's the second one. The next one, 2.3 and 2.5, good. And then 2.5 and 2.75. Excellent. That's comparing. I've got both values ready. Unfortunately, then it blew up because index was equal to 4. When index is equal to 4, data at position 4 is what value? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 2.75. But what's data at position 4 plus 1?
Nothing.
Not nothing. Out of bounds.
Out of nothing.
Okay, that's why we got an out of bounds. Okay, and that was actually the biggest issue that we have here. The issue is that I'm basically going too far. Okay, how do we not go too far? Take one step less. Okay. Yeah, that's it. Take one step less. We often have to do this type of thing. We're going through, we're comparing things, and if you're going to go past the end, you just take one step less. If you're comparing this value, and the next value, you'd stop two things early. Okay. The initial problem that popped up in this is how about we calculate a moving average, because once again it's something from the banking fintech world. It's a little bit more complicated because if you're calculating a moving average for 5 days, you have to look forward 5 steps, which means you have to stop 5 steps earlier. In the end, they brought it back to only 1. Okay, and it kind of changed the problem. All right, so here we go. This is printing the values, but I don't want to print them. I'm looking for anomalies. Okay, let's put in an anomaly. There we, sorry, that's no good. All right, do I have an anomaly now? Yeah, I have a problem. All right, the problem appears when index is equal to 1, because I'm doing a comparison of 2.15 and 2.1. Okay, because the second number should be bigger than, strictly bigger than, not equal to, but bigger than the first number. That is an issue. Now, what are we going to do? Well, I'm going to put an if statement to flag that something happened. So I'm going to say if the data at index is bigger than or equal to data at index plus 1. Right now, I'm just going to say, oh, surprise. Not going to do anything else. I'm just going to say surprise for right now. Okay? All right, let's take a look at it. Now, you see what I've done. I think what it might be a little bit better is if I put the print statement beforehand. There we go, probably a little bit better. All right, so the first one, no surprises. Second line, there's a surprise. Okay, there's an issue because the EPS value went down. Okay, and what happens if it, say, stays the same? Yeah, I've got 2 surprises in here. Okay, now, I don't care how many surprises there are. My function returns true if there is no surprises, and it returns false if there is any surprise. Okay, so how do we return false if there's a surprise? Return false. And if there is no surprise, okay, well, it just returned false at this point. There's only one thing. All right, and what about if there is no surprises? Okay, let's go and fix it. We'll put a 2 here. We'll put an 8.5 here. There are no problems. Oh, I probably don't want it to return blah. I probably want it to return true because there was no issue. So everything was fine. At this point now we could trash the print statement. Okay, here we go. So, and yeah, I think we're probably in okay shape. I think we've tried most of the things, but of course we do have to do a couple of quick checks. Okay, and trust me, we're almost finished. Okay, and a mistake is still taking more than I was expecting. Okay, I'm obviously missing a doc string. Okay, type something in quickly. The function checks to make sure that the EPS values are always increasing, returns false otherwise, but it returns true if it is okay, or worst case, copy and paste the doc string. Okay, there's one particular case though that I haven't thought about, and okay. Any problems with this one? No, that's perfectly fine. It's completely true. It is increasing. What about now? Okay, that's a false. Okay, that's good. Now, what about this one? Because there's a plus. Okay, if I run this right now, okay, at least it returns true, and I guess you'd have to ask the question, is that consistent? Does that mean that everything is increasing? Okay, now, it could be answered both either way. Maybe somebody will say, no, how can it be increasing? There's only one value.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a look and see whether or not I covered this one. Please note there are no points, blah, 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 increasing. Oh, good, there was an example down here. And it says that, yeah, we were going to consider it to be true. Okay, so a company with only 1 year reporting will consider it to be true. Okay, that's fine. That's what the person has decided. And of course, what if somebody calls and they don't pass in anything? And right now that seems to return true. And if you come back here and take a look at this one, it says return false because obviously if there's absolutely no data points, whoever's written this has said that that's going to be considered no.
Yeah.
Okay, how do we deal with that? Special case. Where do we check special case? Yeah, right at the beginning. If the length of data is exactly equal to 0, return false, and there we go. And that's what we decided. Since I'm here, and I think about this, okay, that works, okay? But I don't really recommend doing it, but it does work, okay? The length of equal to 0 is probably a much better way of doing it. So if you're to do this, whoever is grading should circle and say use the length instead. The reason for this is because, again, I know, okay, so it's not applicable to the banking fintech students, but it is for the IT students. If you go on, you learn other courses where you're using a different language like Java or JavaScript. This type of comparison might not be possible, but the length being equal to 0, that's pretty uniform across all languages. That's why I wouldn't take marks off for it for this course, but I would circle and say use the length is equal to 0 instead. Okay, so just recommendation. All right, so as I say, docstring, copy and paste, and yeah, there you go. Those are the questions. All right, and you can see that this one was just a little bit trickier because, well, maybe people haven't done a lot of work comparing things like side by side. So you'd have to say, okay, how are we going to do this? So this is the type of thing that would pop up in the second question. It's not supposed to be impossible, but maybe it requires a little bit different thinking than something that we have seen. The first example is things that you should have more or less seen before. Not the same question, by the way. It never works this way. You will never see any of those lab questions. Yes, I can make an infinite number of problems. Okay, and we do. Okay, every semester, there's a whole pile of problems that are generated for these exercises. So don't ever memorize solutions to problems, but that doesn't mean you don't practice those problems because guess what? There's going to be a lot of patterns that show up over and over again. So there you go. Now you have a pattern for comparing pairs of values. Okay, and of course, well, this one right back here, having the bad customers equal to an empty list and a pending all the time, yeah, that just keeps showing up. I mean, we've seen this a pile of times. When we go off and we deal with tuples and we deal with sets and we deal with dictionaries, you see the same patterns appearing over and over again as well. Okay? All right. That's slightly less time than yesterday, so that's better. Okay, all good. Again, just as a reminder, the timer that shows up is for the full time, not just the MCQs. Okay, I don't want any complaints saying, oh, I thought it was just the first part. No, it's the whole thing. Okay, once you go forward, you can't go back. Okay, Otherwise, I would say good luck, and I hope that we've got you prepared so that everybody does incredibly well this time. Okay? All right, that's all.